get your mouth.
Hello YouTube, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to create dynamic charts. Okay, on your screen you can see a set of temperature readings across a specified number of dates from February 2017 to April 2018, and you notice that the chart is showing the last 10 observations. Okay, so whenever I go in and then maybe I add a couple of observations, let's say 45, 55 and 65, I add 3 observations to this. The chart rearranges itself and it always shows me the last 10 observations. Even when I go back and then I remove maybe the last 2, the chart rearranges itself and then we see the last 10 observations. And how do we do this? Okay, this is done by using Excel's dynamic ranges, and I'm going to start from scratch and I'll show you how to let this work for you. So I'm going to copy this data again and then just put it in the blank sheet, and I'm going to plot the last 10 observations. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and plot a chart of this. Okay, I'm going to select all of this and then we can go to insert and chart, but I don't want to do that. I want to use the shortcut to do this. So the shortcut to plot a chart is, first you select the chart, the range for the chart, and just press Alt F1 and your chart is selected, and it creates an embedded chart in the sheets that you are working on. So this is a chart that is based on this. Now when I go in to add, let's say 2 more observations, and let's say this one is 65 and this one is 87, you notice that my chart is not changing because it is only limited to the last selection that I did. And if I want to let this include the last few observations that is added, I might have to go and then reselect my range again. But then I don't want to be doing this each time new data is added. For instance, if you are working in a company and you are responsible for creating charts every day, and then there's data being added every day, you don't want to come here and always come here and increase the chart range. Okay, you want to do this by using dynamic ranges, and that is what I'm going to do today for you to see. So the first thing to do is to create the dynamic range, and the first range is going to be for the date, and another dynamic range is going to be for the temperature. So I'm going to call the date range, just give it an arbitrary name. I'm going to call it the date range, and then the other one is the temperature range. And all these are going to be dynamic ranges. Temp range. Okay. Alright, so how do we create this dynamic range? I'm going to use the offset function, and for those of you who don't know how to use the offset function, watch my video on how to use the offset function. But for now I'm just going to go ahead and use that. Okay, so the offset function starts from one point and then it moves down, left, up or right. Okay, so I'm going to start with the offset function, and then where do I want to start? I'm going to start at the beginning of where the data is. So I select B4 and press F4 to lock this. Now this is the next argument, and whilst you are putting in your functions, you have to be watching the screen tip. Okay, the first one is a reference, which is where I want to start. Now the next argument is going to be what? How many rows do I want to go down? Okay, now I don't know how many rows I would want to go down, because this could be 20 rows, 1,000 rows, 1 million rows. I don't know. So but all that I know is that I want to capture the last every observation in that column. Okay, so even if there are 14, I want to capture just the 14. So I'm going to use a function called the count A. Okay, we have 2 functions, the count and then the count A. The count is only used for counting numbers, and the count A is used for counting cells that aren't empty. Okay, so I'm going to use the counter. So how many rows do I want to go down? I want to go use the counter function. Okay, and then it's going to start from here and then go down as long as we have data in that column. Okay, you don't want to go and select the whole column. Okay, that is going to be too much. So you have to know how many rows you are likely to get, in your data. Okay, so I'm going to start counting from B4 to, let's make it 200. Okay, B4 to 200. The assumption is that our data will never get to 200 months. Okay, and then you press F4 to log this, and then I close this. That is the number of rows. Okay, and then the next observation, put a comma. The next observation is the columns. How many columns do we want to move? We don't want to move any column. We just want to still stay on the same column, which is column B. So I'm going to put one column. Okay, no column. So you can either leave it blank or just put in comma. Okay, and then go to the next. What is the height of your range? So this is a dynamic range. What is the height of your range? I said we wanted the last 10 observations. So the last 10 observation is that when I find myself on the last observation, I want to go up 10. Okay, so when you go up 10, it's minus. You are going in the negative direction, so minus 10. Okay, and then you press comma. The next is the width. What is the width of your observations? We just want to stay in this column, so the width is just going to be what? 1. Okay, so we want it to be 1. All right. Okay, now when you press enter, you see this value error, and the reason why we are seeing this value error is that we are trying to put a lot of cells into one cell, and you cannot do that. You cannot put a lot of values in one cell. They are different cells, and you cannot cramp them into one cell. That is why we are getting this value error, but that's okay. It's fine. We are going to use it anyway. All right. Okay, now we can test. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you. We can test this range to make sure that it is encompassing the range that we intend to plot. So what we need to do here is to select this. Okay, select this and copy. All right, Control C to copy. And then the next thing to do is to press F5 to bring the go-to box. Instead of pressing F5, you can press Control G. It's the same thing. So F5 and then paste it here. Okay, when you paste it here, press enter. You notice that it has selected the last 10, but there is one problem. It is, although it is selecting 10, it is missing the last one. It is supposed to select 10, and the last one should be 7/1/2018. So you notice we have to make some adjustment to our dynamic range. Okay, and so we need to go back, and that is because we have an observation in column B, which is the date. So we have to go back and subtract 1 from the number of rows which has the function count A. So we subtract 1 from that. So once we do that, we can copy this again and want to go and test this range. And I'm going to bring back the go-to box again, and it's F5, and I'm going to paste it here, and then you notice that it has selected the last 10 observations. Okay, and you can even see it from down here is the last 10 observations. Okay, assuming that I go back again and then I add, let's say, 2 more observations to this, and let's say the values are 65 and 77, and then I go back again to my F5 and I paste my dynamic range and I press enter key. You notice that it has selected the last 10. Right, so whatever you do, even if you remove stuff from here, it's always going to select the last 10. It means that my dynamic range is working. Okay, and that is the dynamic range for date. Now I'm going to do the dynamic range for temperature. Because we have already done it for date, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to copy this for the date. Okay, and then the only thing I need to change here is to change from column B to column C. So I'm going to change and make it C4, where I'm going to have the reference point, and then this one is going to be B4, and make sure that you lock everything. B4 to this one is going to be C4 to C200. Okay, that one is also going to give you a value error because we are trying to put so many cells in one cell, and I forgot to lock this cell, so press F4 to lock the B4. Now I'm going to test the temperature range and make sure that dynamic range is working. So just copy it, Control C, and press F5 to bring the go to box and paste this in there. Press enter, and it selects the last 10 digits. Okay, the last 10 temperature observations. Even if I take out these two, right, and then I go back and then press F5 again and paste this in, it always selects the last 10. So my dynamic range is working. All right, now the next thing to do is to create a name range for my dynamic ranges. Okay, and how do we create a name range for this? Okay, Control F3 is going to do that, or you can go to formula and define name. Okay, but then I like shortcuts, so I'm going to put in Control F3, and there are already date ranges in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of them because I have used them earlier on, but I want to start from afresh. So I'm going to delete all the name ranges that I have in this cell, in this workbook, and then I'm going to create it anew. Okay, so my first name range is the date range, and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy the whole of this. That is my name range. So Control F3, and this you press new, and the name we want to give this is date range. Date range, and then we want to put in the reference, what it refers to. So I want to put in the dynamic range, and it has to start with equal to. Okay, let me go back again and put in my name range. I got an error there. Date range, and I paste this in here. So it's created. Okay, whilst you are here, you can press the tab key. Once you press the tab key, you see this selected, and you notice that okay, it's working. I'm going to do the same thing for, I'll say okay or close it, and I'm going to do the same thing for the temperature range as well. So I'm going to copy this and then go back to my Control F3 and then put a new range, which I'm going to call the temp range, like I have in the temp range, like I have on the sheet. And then you go back, remove whatever is here, and then paste that temperature range and say okay. And you can always test this. Press tab. Whilst we have selected the temp range, I spelled the temp range wrongly, so I'm going to go back and then fix it. Temp range. All right, so you can test it. Whilst you have selected the temp range, press the tab and it goes to the refer to box, and you notice that this is selected. So my range is working. Now, having done this, okay, I'm going to put in this dynamic range, these two dynamic ranges, in my chart. Okay, so you go to the chart, you select your chart and right click on the chart somewhere and then select data. Okay, now this is the temperature, and this is the on the right hand side, the horizontal axis is going to show the dates. Okay, but we don't want to use the range that we had. We want to use the values, we want to use the dynamic range. Okay, so I'm going to remove everything that is here. Okay, and then I just invoke the dynamic range. And remember, I named the dynamic range is what? Date range and temp range. So this is going to be what? Date range. Okay, now look at something. There's going to be an error message here. Okay, and another way to put in your dynamic range is to just press F3, and you can select what range you want to put in. Okay, instead of typing, you can just select it. And then so the date range, the temperature range is what we are doing now. No, this is the date temperature range. Yes, so temperature range, and it puts in the temperature range. Okay, but then when you say okay, it gives you an error, and the reason why it gives you an error is that Excel doesn't like the name range by itself in the values series values box. Okay, you have to include the sheet name as well. Okay, so remember, you cannot just put a named range in an Excel chart series values field. You have to include the name of the chart. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to do is that, what is the name of this chart? So the name of the chart is plotting the last 10 observations. It is kind of long name. I'm just going to remove this and then just rename it and make it just say, let's say sheet 1. Okay, so let me go back and then select the date, and then the temp range. I'm going to go in, and now it's showing sheet 1. Okay, but I'm going to remove the initial range that we used. Okay, now I'm going to put in the dynamic range. Just press F3 at this point, and that is the temperature. Select the temperature and say okay. So you see it says sheet 1 temp range, and then you say okay. So my dynamic range is selected. Okay, now I have to do the same thing for the horizontal axis. So let's press on edit, still maintaining the sheet 1. Don't remove the sheet 1. Remove the initial observations. Again, go back, remove the initial range that we put there, which start from the dollar, and then keep the sheet range with the exclamation sign. You press F3, and this is the date range. Okay, so select the date range, and then you say okay. So this is a dynamic range. Okay, all right. So and then everything is done perfectly, and then we have our dynamic date range for the chart. Okay, and it's a dynamic range for the last 10 observations, right? So for instance, if I go in here and add, let's say 3 more observations, and then I put in the value, let's say this one is 35 and 77 and 98, you notice that it changes, and each time it shows you the last 10 observations. Even if I go in there and then remove a couple of observations at the bottom, remove them, it rearranges itself. And just for you to make sure that this is working as it should, I'm going to change the design. Go to the design and then select one of the nice designs that we have. Let's say we can select that. Okay, so you notice that, and then you can even rename or change the heading. So temperature, we can say last 10 temperature readings. Okay, so now even if I 4 more observations, and this is 45, 77, 26, 23, you notice that the chart has rearranged itself, and each time it's giving me the last 10 observations. And once you have done this, you can just use your chart to cover the the formula that we have here. Since we don't need that anymore, you can just put it here. So you don't have to, when more data is added, you don't have to go into the chart and then reselect your range, but just leave it as is. We have already defined a dynamic range, and each time it will give you the last 10 observations. Let me add one more observation to this, and I make this 99, and you notice that it rearranges, and then you see the last 10 observations. Okay, so it's very simple. You can try your hands, just create some dummy variables and then try your hands at this. If you have any questions, just send me at an email or respond in the comment section, and I'll be glad to help you. Let me correct this temperature reading here. The spelling is wrong. It's temperature readings. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.